Iceland. Anna is an academic teacher. She teaches creative writing. She's a translator and a children's book writer. She's particularly interested in exploring Icelandic and English literature for children from the perspective of nationhood, history and landscape. So we're looking forward to Anna's paper. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming. I made some handouts. I see that I was pessimistic about how many people would show up. So I don't have, I may not have enough, but I can make some more afterwards. So this is my beautiful country. And that's about me. So my doctoral thesis was about landscape, and so I call it Rolling Hills, which is representative for the landscape of England, and Rocky Crags, which is representative for the landscape of Iceland. So it's history, landscape, and national identity in children's books, English and Icelandic children's books. And it was about 86 books. So this is what sort of my, because I'm talking about one chapter of my thesis, or a sub-chapter of my thesis. This is, from the summary, it is a comparative study of the differences between the English and the Icelandic approach to class, family, community, institutions of state, popular culture and politics. So the dissimilarities are rooted in histories and landscapes of the two nations, which are vastly contrasting, even though we're so close, the landscape is so different. So the outcome of the study implies that the Icelandic nation actually seems secure in its identity. The experiences of history have produced a national attitude of unity. In contrast, the evidence shows that the English national identity is marked by division in terms of class and region, landscape and language. So as this thesis shows how national identity is reflected in English and Icelandic children's books and constructed through these, it's important to show how the North is actually shown from an English perspective in some English books for children. So this is an observation of another nation's culture is noticeable in many contemporary English books, which are set in a foreign country, and we've already seen examples of that in Joachim's talk. So that is, and it has struck me how England has been displayed in English children's books as the world's center, actually, to which other cultures are placed as subordinate. So it is placed firmly at the midpoint of the world, referring to Asian countries as the East or the Orient, to America as the West, to Spain and other sunny countries as romantic South, and to an indefinite area north of England as the North. It's even, as we see in Winnie the Pooh, in the map you see just, the North is something out there. And part of this conceptualization comes from the fact that England was a seafaring nation, and therefore travelers who must be aware of direction for trade purposes. And England perceived itself at the world's center. But this centering of England has found its way into books. So children's books show as I have on the slide, the exotic East, the Wild West, the romantic South, and the cold, dark North. So this is, and there's a link of association with each of these, and I shall focus in this section of those connected with the North, using examples from English children's books, in order to show how English national identity is defined against this English conceptualization of the North. So this is, for us who come from strange places, like this quote, that for some people when you say Timbuktu, it's like the end of the world. but that's not true. I am from Timbuktu, and I can tell you we are right at the heart of the world. So this is the musician Ali Farka tour. So as my thesis surveyed how national identity is reflected in English and Icelandic children's books and constructed through these, it is of particular interest to examine this, how this viewpoint about the North. So Said, you all know Edward Said, his groundbreaking Orientalism offers an insight into spatial connotations from a European and particularly English point of view. Said claims that the Orient was almost a European invention and had been since antiquity a place of romance, exotic beings, haunting memories and landscapes, remarkable experiences. So he says the Orient has helped to define Europe or the West as its contrasting image, idea, personality, experience. And yet none of this Orient is merely imaginative. The Orient is an integral part of European material civilization and culture. So Said brings attention to the fact that before the Orient was discovered, Europe had nothing to contrast with. After the Orient was found, Europe became the Occident, as he calls it. So this is, as Said says, I have begun with the assumption that the Orient is not an inert fact of nature. It's not merely there, just as the Occident itself is not there either. We must take seriously Vico's great observation that men make their own history, that what they can know is what they have made, and extend it to geography. As both geographical and cultural entities, to say nothing of historical entities, such locales, regions, geographical sectors as Orient and Occident are man-made. So therefore, as much as the West itself, the Orient is an idea that has a history and a tradition of thought, imagery and vocabulary that have given it reality and presence in and for the West. So the English concept of North, I would suggest, has developed along similar lines as the Orient, as the concept of the Orient, placing England at the imperial center. So Said says that the Orient is not merely there. You can also apply that to the North, which has been bestowed with a number of connotations, especially in children's books. The English passion for exploration of the unknown and dangerous territory of the North is recollected by Jeanette Mirsky in a book from 1934 to the Arctic. So in the beginning of Arctic explorations, men went to the North very reluctantly to find a route to the East. So it was this idea of the awe-inspiring North seems to derive from their tales of its darkness, its cold and harshness. So Mirsky writes that men would only undertake Arctic voyages in the period, not just following the discovery of the New World, if they had a very strong motive. And we have, so she says men were as fearful of the dangers of the Arctic as they were of the terrors of hell. They dreaded its terrible ice and its terrifying darkness. They ventured within the Arctic only in the hope of finding there a short, direct route to the Spice Islands of the East. This initial phase had two results. The wealth of the North was noted and exploited, and the romantic strangeness of its regions were broadcast. So the image of the Arctic had firmly been set. It had, like the Orient, been discovered by European explorers who gradually came to refer to it as the North. Like travelers to the Orient, Arctic explorers returned with both material riches and colorful tales of the North that stirred the English imagination. So Mirsky points out, it is little wonder that the North was to have such a hold upon the imagination of the English. They who fed and grew upon its bounty, the North. So she refers to the Arctic regions as what she says, the attic of the world. So the secrets kept in the Arctic of the world were waiting to be discovered. So you could say it's like discovering the mad woman in the attic in Jane Eyre. So it is. So the North was assigned qualities like the mad woman in the attic in Jane Eyre. So it was by observers and especially in children's books. So the North. So you all probably know ever since H.C. Andersen's fairy tale, The Snow Queen, who adopts a young Kay and carries him to her cold castle in the north. We have England's children's books writers have assigned evil, witches, death and destruction to the north. And here you see this was 1844. And actually I have the wrong quote there. It is, should be another quote. So at the back of the North Wind, I guess you all know that book, George MacDonald. So MacDonald uses the undefined image of the North, which is the home of the North Wind, and to give a sense of place to that which has no place. The North Wind, as kind as she is to Diamond, brings death. So he is assigning a landscape to the abstract, and he placed on the idea of the North as place, with other English conceptualizations attached. So almost a century later, you still have that. You still have an evil snow queen. You could say that in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So that they find Narnia under the spell of the evil White Witch, who has the land covered with snow and ice. And she has turned this place into a hellish place, which actually which belongs to the North, as it is. So that when the four children put on heavy fur coats, Lucy says, we can pretend we are Arctic explorers. We're going into that sort of evil North. So later, when they have become kings and queens of Narnia, they draw back the fierce giants in the north of Narnia when these ventured across the frontier. So that is the land north of Narnia is the evil North. I don't know how many of you have seen this book. Yes, I see some nods around the place. So it was first published in 1960. It presents the North as a source of death and destruction. The clouds in the north of Cheshire mean that Fimble winter is approaching. So Fenrir comes upon the children from the north as a wolf head in the sky with hungry yellow eyes and a huge mouth. And when the children come out of the fir plantation and they see all of the sky, the blue sky and brilliant sun had vanished. From horizon to horizon, the air was black and yellow with unbroken clouds, like monstrous bloated landlocked seals, bad-tempered and complaining, whose swollen weight seemed scarce able to clear the treetops as they humped and rolled before the raucous thunder of seal-herding north wild wind. So the north wild wind is a precursor of Ragnarok, which actually, and after they destruct the snowy ground, is as empty of life as a polar shore. That is another quote from that one. So and the north, of course, can stand when you're in England from an English viewpoint. The north can actually stand for Scotland, and the implications of evil from the north could derive from the past, when the rebellious Scots would unexpectedly flock from the north, attack. That was a danger from there. Because the north could be Iceland, the north could be Norway, and the north is not one particular place. And that is, for instance, in Roald Dahl's The Witches, that all the witches, they originate in Norway, according to Dahl. Yep, thank you. But the north is this allegory of a dangerous place. So the North, for instance, in Harry Potter, I don't have to read all that for you, but so in Harry Potter, they're going when they're going to Hogwarts, they're heading north, and as the train comes further and further north, you're coming into the unknown territory, where evil things can happen and magic can take place. So this is sort of indicating that so magic seems more at home in the cold, barren, and unknown landscape of the north. And as I guess so many of you have read Puma, I actually translated the trilogy into Icelandic at the time. So the child thieves are actually taking the children to a town in the far north, way up in the land of the dark. So this is, so Lyra ends up going to Norway. And as she approaches the harbor, she smells the north. The smell was of fish, but mixed with it came land smells too. Pine, resin, and earth, and something animal and musky, and something else that was cold and blank and wild. It might have been snow. It was the smell of the north. So the north actually has a smell. And but strangely, the north does not conceive of itself as the north, as being the north, with its own smell and a doubtful character. But because Puma refers to the northern part of Norway as the north, I sought an English Norwegian dictionary which translates the north, the term the north, into Norwegian, mainly only as the northern part of England. So that is, and even my English Icelandic dictionary defines the term as relating to the northern part of the United States, or the part of England that lies north of Yorkshire, Derbyshire, and Cheshire. So that is the north anyway. So according to the dictionaries, there is no such thing as the north up in the Arctic. It is an imagery, allegorical term. I don't know if you know this, Rob Shields, he examines how writers use spatial and geographical metaphors to describe a state of mind in these places on the margin. So he says the north in Canada is not just north, but a zone of the social imaginary. So it's a wilderness and a place of purity. So he quotes Bailey, who comments, contrary to what is often stated, studies and representations do not focus on the particular characteristics of images, but show instead that a place is nothing by itself, but depends on other places and practices to imbue it with meaning. And you have seen the contrast normally we have the contrast of the paradise, and you have a place like the Garden of Eden and the north, these two contrasts. Eden is a lush, warm garden ripe with fruit where men and women can reside, but the north, on the other hand, it polarizes Eden. It's a place where one needs fur clothing to be warm, and where one must kill seals and reindeer for food, and nature provides nothing except endless ice, snow, and gloomy darkness. So this is this is East Hope on Paradise Lost, and as you know who have read Pullman, he actually said he bases his trilogy, his Dark Materials trilogy, on Milton's Paradise Lost. It's kind of so that is so I would argue that the Arctic North is one more metaphysical opposition. The Arctic is real, but the North is actually reproduced and reworked concept. It's a place where you can cut children, as you have in evil things can happen in the North. So you have to go north to reach a place where this, it's first the books are started in Oxford, the utmost of Englishness, but then you come to this then you come to the north, where you have the ultimate sort of fight between. So Puma brings the polarities of Eden and the north to a culminating Ragnarok, where, and it's funny that we Icelanders, we tend to write things from Icelandic things from the sagas as like the English do, because it's normally spelled differently in Icelandic. So, and it is, and here he has the new E, Lærandil. So the concept of Ragnarok is well known in Icelandic literature. And yeah, so that is out of time. So, and I give you references, so you can, they're actually on the last slide, so that you can, and I'll, if somebody else wants a copy of these slides, we can make them afterwards.
Okay, thank you. It's a great paper, I enjoyed it very much. So questions from the floor, I'm sure there are some. Yes?
This is very fascinating to me, the subject of your paper. It's an area I've been looking at as well, I might talk about later on. But one of the things I wanted to ask was just toward, in relation to methodology, when you were gathering the text that you were looking at, and what signifiers of northernness you were seeking in them. So sort of firstly, what parameters did you use to choose the text that you chose, and secondly, how did you look for the north within them?
That came us because I chose. It was very hard when you're comparing children's literature from two nations to sort of sift out what you should. So I actually just when starting out with the thesis, I just picked some books that that were prize awarded books from a certain period and used them for my thesis. So it just happened that the north was there in them. And I particularly picked on that while I was writing the essay, as you know, seeing how the English looked at Iceland and looked at the region there. So there was so the methodology was prize awarded books.
And in relation to looking for northerness within that, did you literally look for the word north? Or?
Yeah, the word north, or this idea of the north. Yeah.
Well, it's just, I suppose, in relation to what you're saying, which is fascinating, this idea of the Arctic as being real, as opposed to the North being conceptual. I'm wondering, are there other things other than just the word North or Northern that you can look for that denote that conceptualized North?
That's interesting. Yeah, that you could think of in other than the North.
What are the other signifiers? You know?
Yeah, the signifiers mean just that people are going northwards, that people are going beyond the map, this known map, into this unknown place. Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes it's not even. We have that in so many other stories. I mean, Frankenstein's beasts goes, of course, up north where that happens. It would be interesting to just. Not only to apply this to children's literature, but of course in other kinds of literature.
I guess that goes to Orkney, doesn't it? It comes here.
It comes here.
Yeah.
So this is the north. Yeah.
Yes.
That was really interesting, and you're talking a lot about literature written in English, but you translated the Puma into Icelandic. And I wondered how far the concept of the north, say in Pullman, whether that makes sense to people from Iceland, how that concept translates.
Yeah, because we know, of course, the physical landscape of Norway that is referred, that Pullman refers to, and actually, as for Icelanders, actually the publishers, the publishers were not sure if there was a readership for Pullman in Iceland, because the polar bears talk. Would Icelanders be willing to buy that? That you actually had talking polar bears. So that was one of the resistance from the publisher, and because I don't think that Icelanders would take the setting as Icelandic. It would rather be the north of Norway.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
Thanks for that. That's like a bit of a journey through some of my favourite authors in there. So I wonder how much in your research you've come across highlighting this concept of the north and the fact that a lot of these people are heading north with almost these self-discovery and self-challenges that they need to overcome. So they're having to, within that environment, sometimes they see, it's within that environment in which they actually need to move beyond something and into the next step. I wonder if that's a theme that you've developed at any point or interested in developing.
Yeah, because this trip northwards takes courage. I think that is this. It's a sort of a, you could say it's a sort of a building. It's showing as you would say, almost like a Bildungsroman would be put that way towards the north, as if exploring some new possibilities.
I've got a question, if I may. I was wondering if you also try to explore the axiological aspect and the values related to North, or the way the values of the people coming to North evolve.
Which values would evolve when they come to the north. That is very often, the courage, the bravery, and as you've all said about the Viking, the Viking concept to show that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, any other? Yes?
I just wanted to make, it was a great paper, I really enjoyed it, so I don't want you to take this as a criticism, but a lot of the writers that you quote are not actually English, they're British, and it's, you come across this paradox, and you talked about it when you said that in England, Scotland is the north.
Yes.
So to talk about English books is perhaps a bit misleading. Perhaps it should be books written in English or British books.
Yeah, so it should be.
I know it's awkward to say that all the time, but English is perhaps an irritating shorthand for people who are from Britain but not England.
Yeah.
Or indeed
So
Northern Ireland in the case of C.S.
Well, C.S. Lewis, Northern Ireland, and of course I was thinking, the Giants came from the north, but if you're Northern Irish, the Giants Causeway is in the north of Ireland. It's obvious. Giants are obviously going to come from the north because that's where their causeway is.
Well, lots of people in England who think anywhere north of Watford is in the north.
Yeah, that's interesting to see where does that, as was defined earlier, north of Yorkshire or Cheshire. But I understand your concept about the English, because also in some of the books in parts of my essay, because the English are colonial in nature. It's how for instance, they write about the Welsh in children's books. It's interesting to see that. But while as from Iceland we feel tiny, we don't feel that colonizing.
Yeah.
We always feel intimidated. All the children in Icelandic books who come to other countries, they are very often intimidated by that country. Whereas the English, as I don't know if you've read Turku, anybody knows Turku? That is a boy, raised in the East, and so the English always feel, much more colonial, much more self-confident coming to another country than somebody from a small nation.
Yes.
Just a little argumentative response to what you had said. I would want to defend the English, because if you look at Europe, there's hardly any nation which did not try to build an empire. Perhaps Ireland is the exception, I don't know, but there are small nations.
Poland.
Yeah. No. What I'm trying to say, I'm trying to complete that. The British, because that's the correct word, it was the British Empire, were more successful and the other were not. But the intentions, I suspect, were there a little bit everywhere. Those who succeeded, it's very much in European ideology. A sense, we talk about Eurocentrism, actually, a sense of superiority and so on and so forth. I mean, the Netherlands are a very small nation, but they were a formidable little empire.
Yeah,
Venice, which I mentioned yesterday, no one forgets, but Venice was a formidable empire, just tiny little archipelago. So smallness is not guarantee of niceness.
And Iceland.
I believe you. I believe you that Iceland is the exception, so I'm not questioning that. But
We colonised Greenland,
I was gonna
actually.
say.
there you are.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, one more question.
I was just going to comment on Harry Potter, that I think it's fascinating how Harry Potter starts with this traditional image of magic being in the north, we're going to Hogwarts and that. But then as you read more through the series, the great big message is that magic is everywhere. And suddenly a magical child can be born into an ordinary family, and there's a ministry of magic in London, for goodness sake. And so you can't escape magic. It's all among us, it's all over Europe, it's all over the world. So it starts with this cliche of magic in the north, but it leaves it.
Yeah,
Do we know that Harry Potter's going north when they get on the train?
Yes,
we think they're
we
going
do.
north because
Yeah.
it's King's Cross.
No,
And
it
we
says
know
it's
the
going
train
north.
is north.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
we
it
know
is.
it's north because in book 2 they fly above the train in a car, and then you
is
can
that true
trace the
they say it's
journey.
going
Yeah.
north?
Yes. So, any other questions? Well, we can continue this discussion over the break. So thank you very much.